Somebody said on Twitter this week, I still call Australia home. That's because I can't afford an airfare to get out of here. Price gouging. Now, my old colleague, Peter Fitzsimons from the Sydney Morning Herald, had an interview with Alan Joyce this week. Fitzy asked the right questions, but it was a bit of a Joyce snow job, really, because the first proposition was, why are airfares so high? And Alan Joyce said they are so high because it takes 4,000 hours of maintenance just to get one plane back in the air, just to wake the aircraft up. Now, let's bear in mind there was no disclaimer on this story by Fitzy, who works for the Nine Entertainment Network these days. How much does Nine get from Qantas a year in advertising? Is it 5 million? Is it 15 million? Who knows? But it is a lot of money. And when I was there, I had to put my own job on the line to stop them sacking the aviation reporter. Such is their clout. Qantas has clout. It has clout because all the politicians are in the chairman's lounge. We saw what happened to Jackie Lambie recently when Jackie was banned from the chairman's lounge for making undue comments. They just banned her. They said, you can't come in the chairman's lounge anymore. The other way they do it, the thing that they lord over the politicians, is this business of pulling routes, let's say from Sydney to Wagga Wagga, threatening the government. We're just going to have to pull that route. It's uneconomic for us. And if it's in a marginal seat, what's the politician going to do? Please don't pull that route. We'll have the whole of Wagga Wagga up against us. Now, of course, that's just an example, but this is an age-old Qantas tactic to lord it over politicians. The other one, of course, is that Alan Joyce plays different scoreboards. He tells the ASX, the investors in Qantas, how wonderful things are. We're going to make $1 billion profit this year. But he cries poor to government about high jet fuel costs and about the incredible costs of running an airline. He's got to explain to the ATO why he's not paying any tax again this year. He's got to tell customers things are tough, and that's why we're just working on that service. He's got to tell staff who are now on 56 different EBAs under Joyce's Divide and Conquer program of industrial relations. He's got to tell the unions and the workers, look, we're really doing it tough. So he's telling the investors, oh, we're going great. He's telling the unions, we're really doing it tough. We're going to have to cut costs again. But this business of price gouging, let's just have a look at this. Now, the price of jet fuel, which is the main cost besides labour for Qantas, is the same as it was in March, but airfares are still sky high and profits are going up. Now, yes, there is supply and demand. It's bounced back from COVID. That is a thing. And there is a duopoly, and Virgin is doing the same. And Virgin, of course, we get criticised for never spanking Virgin hard enough. They are a miserable bunch of terrible international tax dodgers, but their service is better than Qantas. They don't upset people as much. They don't lose as many bags. Their on-time performance is better. But to get to this Furphy in the Fitzy interview, to give him his credit, he's asked the right questions, Fitzy, but to get to this business of 4,000 man-hours of labour to get a plane back in the air, this from a Qantas insider. So Qantas has 75 737s, 10 380s, 28 330s, 11 787s, plus Jetstar's 76. The 4,000 hours for each aircraft would be for a 380 that hasn't flown for 2 years. The comment about tyres is only true if the aircraft are not moved every week to stop them getting flat spots on them, and many Qantas aircraft were moved for that very reason. Total fleet, 200 aircraft. Let's assume that 20% were kept flying, so we're now down to 160 planes. Let's further assume that the 4,000 hours averages out at 2,000 hours when you take into account the smaller aircraft, and let's assume an engineer is $200 an hour and as many are unlicensed. That is highly unlikely. So the total cost, if you add all that up, is $64 million. That's hardly a big ticket in the scheme of things at Qantas, a huge cost. And then Fitzy went on to ground handling and things like that, to which Alan Joyce responded, some people are better than us at ground handling. So that's why we've outsourced it. Now, how technical can ground handling be? It's not like you do 10 years of training like an orthopaedic surgeon to become a ground handler. So that is a furphy too. So it was a bit of a snow job, the right questions asked. But this goes to the issue for Qantas because they're bayoneting the dead a bit at the moment, the mainstream media, because they realise that service standards have plunged so much that the brand has been damaged and people are choosing other options unless they have to fly Qantas. So the big deal with Qantas really is that this is the biggest exponent of corporate welfare in Australia. That's why we like to talk about Qantas, because they've savaged the brand. They've cut costs so heavily and made enemies of their workforce. And this was a national asset that was sold, that was privatised. So they're running a double story here. We're capitalists. Leave the market to it. But that's after $2 billion plus of JobKeeper and other aviation subsidies. So this epitomises where Australia is at, and a lot of the rest of the world, since the GFC, when Wall Street was bailed out, because we're not really in capitalism at all. We're in crony capitalism, and that's what Qantas represents. Get money from wherever you can. If you can get it out of government, that's great, because you don't have to pay it back. So what's the answer here? Well, the answer is other countries have a thing called a service obligation. They have to provide minimum service standards. Such is their charter. Qantas doesn't have that. The money that they were gifted was not a loan, it was just a gift. So there's been a huge transfer of public wealth, of our money, to Qantas. They've even had the cheek to do a share buyback with it as well to get their share price up, because that affects their options, so the executives get richer. This is crony capitalism at its worst, putting this magnificent brand at risk for corporate profits.